What is going on to all my servant fans out there, and welcome back to my channel. We are here today to break down and discuss this fourth and final season, episode 7, titled Myth. Now in this episode, Dorothy discovers a connection with Leanne as Uncle George shares information with Sean and Julian. Now if you all have been following my reviews for the past few years, you know how much I always praise the direction of Ishana Shyamalan, who's one of my favorite directors of this entire series. Now she directed this episode, and I forgot to mention last week, as you all can see on the screen now, shared from her father's Instagram account. We've always been saying, when will she direct the movie, because she's such a great director? Well, as you all can see, she will be making her directorial debut for a new line thriller for a movie called The Watchers, coming to theaters next summer. So first and foremost, super excited for her, big fan of her work, can't wait to see what this film's all about. But I bring that up to say this. Now we know she's the director of the 7th episode, and again, you know how much I love her, but I'm gonna be honest with you all, I have a love and hate relationship with this very episode, and we'll be getting into my reasons why as we break it down today's spoiler review. But before we do so, let's start the conversation in the comments below. What did you all think about this 7th episode? I'm talking about the lies, the truths, what was real, what was fake, what worked, what didn't work, and of course sharing your theories, your predictions, your Easter eggs, your deeper meanings that you all took away from this episode in the comment section. And of course, if you all appreciate and you enjoy these reviews, consider hitting the thumbs up button as well as sharing this video. It means a lot to me, and I appreciate the support. That being said, we have a very interesting episode to talk about today. Full spoilers ahead. So I thought it would be important to talk about the title of the episode first off and going over its definition, which by definition, myth is a traditional story, especially one concerning the early history of people or explaining some natural or social phenomenon, and typically involving a supernatural being or events. Also, myth can be a widely held but false belief or idea. I want you all to remember that definition as we break down this episode, as we open the episode with a shot zooming into the sky's darkness as we transition into a close-up to Julian lying in bed with Leanne. He can't seem to get any sleep. He walks over to the window and looks outside to see Leanne's cult keeping a watch. We see Julian sneaking into Sean's office. He finds this book titled Significant Form, as it appears that Sean has marked these different chapters in his book, and one of those chapters went by the name of Fall from Grace, which shows and highlights Lucifer being exiled from heaven, which makes me believe that Sean is making the possible connection between Lucifer and Leanne. We see Dorothy calling one of her contacts at the news to get more information about the clip from when she interviewed young Leanne, only to discover that she didn't sign a release form, or maybe she might have went under a different name, which I thought was very interesting. And we'll be getting to Dorothy and all the information she learned in this particular episode as we cut to Leanne having Julian joining her and dancing in the morning, as he just wants answers to all the terrible things that's recently been happening, especially with last week chaos with the zoo, as she assures Julian that he'll be fine as long as he is with her. She gives him a kiss. She ends up biting his lip and tells him the following: Julian, you talk too much. Remember that line of him talking too much, because he'll be at a loss for words in this episode pretty soon, as we switch over to seeing Sean and Julian discussing Sean's research on Leanne. As long as she's happy, things go well, but when she's not, things go terribly bad, as you must stay loyal to her, and this is called Faustian bargain. Now, by definition, Faustian bargain is an agreement in which a person abandons his or her spiritual values or moral principles in order to obtain knowledge, wealth, or other benefits. That to me is like the definition of what potentially could be going on with Leanne. Let me know your thoughts on that. But Sean brings up the idea of Leanne having died and coming back to life as something else, as he says, a fallen angel maybe. As Julian begins to choke, he's at a loss for words. He puts in his phone, did Leanne do this? And again, this to me connects her telling Julian just minutes ago that he talked too much, or are her powers so amplified now that the house signals her when someone is talking bad about her in a negative light? Let me know what you all thought about that, but I don't think it's a coincidence that when she said he talked too much, he all of a sudden couldn't talk. Let's talk about that in the comments section, as we get this brief, quick scene with Leanne helping Dorothy in her wheelchair, as Leanne gives her encouragement on her new story, because it's Dorothy Turner. She always figures out the story. I thought that was just a very interesting moment there between those two characters. But we see Julian and Sean try to figure out her weakness, and I'm not gonna lie, I noticed someone walking up behind them in this scene, but in my first viewing of this episode, I'm like, wait, is that like someone from the production or the crew maybe mistakenly walking to the shot? But no, it's revealed to be Roscoe, and he's come with a special guest, and it's Uncle George, who has a new look. And I said to myself in this moment, finally, it's time to get more of Uncle George, and he is here to tell the truth about Leanne Grayson, or the question is he? Meanwhile, Dorothy is learning stuff we knew about seasons ago regarding when Julian was looking up all this information with Leanne, as we switch over to Uncle George filling in the blanks for the audience as well as for Sean and Julian. Number one, George has left the church, as he says, and he wants to right his wrongs, starting with the church and having done the Turners wrong. They've been lied to, they've been fooled, they've been bamboozled, as we also see Uncle George goes into a story about him trying to take his own life, and this is where he was introduced to Aunt May, which I do think that is probably a truthful story that he was telling them there. But he goes on to say he died and he was risen again to serve God as a servant with nothing to live for. This was his path that he went down to become working with the lesser saints, and Aunt May and Uncle George were great at what they did. Now again, I personally think that this particular story that he's telling was some truthful things. Moving on, now when it came to Leanne's recruitment, they miscalculated her undying commitment to this belief. When she eventually left the church, George believes her commitment led down this path of her believing that she is something more, she's something greater. She has kind of manifested these new powers. So let's get into the topic here. Let's have this conversation. It was at this very point in the episode that I said to myself, literally out loud, please don't tell me they're going down this path in which this whole situation was made up because these characters are grieving. And we know from a personal, I can just speak for me personally, when you are grieving, you start to believe in things that you never thought were imaginable. You start to accept things that might be a myth, which again, let's have the conversation in the comments. What was your reaction during this scene? Let's talk about it below. Moving on, we see George says the church was built on illusions and that Leanne was a completely normal girl and nothing more. He even paid a visit to Bev recently about her recent injuries from last week, and it turns out that she was just bit by a snake during that party. The simplest solution is always the right one. And again, I'm looking at the screen like, please don't have this be the truth. I'm so upset at this point. But while all this was going on, Dorothy is still doing her research, and she is determined to find more information about Leanne's mother, who she discovers had a pretty bad alcoholic addiction, and she got into a pretty bad car accident in 2005. I think that is some very important information. I can't put the pieces of the puzzle quite yet, but I think this is very integral to what we're going to probably learn in the future episodes, as she learns that Leanne's mom didn't die on the day of the fire, but actually she died 2 days later. Now the question is, was that in result to the fire? Was it something involved her alcoholism? Is she even dead? Is she still alive? And we see Dorothy, she begins to watching all these videos where she finds a young Leanne with Uncle George, seamlessly following her, scouting Leanne. And again, it's not a coincidence that she's doing this on her mother's dying anniversary. I don't think this is a coincidence though. As she was watching one of those videos, Dorothy was covering people claiming they saw aliens in the sky. And if you all have been watching the news lately, like in the last month or so, there have been a lot of, let's just say, extraterrestrial stories lately. So I thought that was a freaking coincidence that they happened to put that in the episode with all the stuff going on recently, or this could simply be an Easter egg to M. Night Shyamalan's movie Signs. Let me know your thoughts on that coincidence there. But moving back into the episode, we see Sean brings up his lost taste and the splinters he had in season 1, as George explains to him that this was a trick that Leanne used to do when he's a child. But now the biggest question of them all, what about Jericho and him becoming a doll whenever she leaves? Well, Uncle George tells him it's a simple answer. The house has secrets. As we see a scene of Leanne taking the baby into the room that Bev and Bobby stayed in, as the baby is put in a vent, and this is where we discover there are tunnels all under the house that were built a very long time ago that Leanne was aware of, and the church does their research with any family they're going to be serving, and she was doing this switch between the baby and the doll. Oh my goodness, when this was all revealed, again, I was hating this moment because I'm like, if this is the truth, this was all for nothing. But then at the same time, I'm thinking, is this a lie? As I digress, Sean is convinced that the baby upstairs is his son. He can feel the presence of baby Jericho as George shows him a cutout of an obituary of a homeless lady who was overdosed and had a baby, and the church found out about this and took that very child. Explains where this baby Jericho comes from. George tells them about Leanne's obsession over Dorothy and how this was a yearly ritual that Leanne, time a year, one day, get to see Dorothy, but it became more than that. As the weeks and days go by, she ended up seeing when Jericho died, and this was a turning point. This was her way in. Finding that baby was her opportunity to get the mother that she always wanted. George continues to tell them that he needs their help in getting Leanne back, as Roscoe, who's still here by the way, he confronts Uncle George about everything he just heard, about all the lies and how he put this faith in the Lesser Saints. As we see George, who at this point, his demeanor completely changes from when he was telling the so-called truth to Sean and Julian. He tells Roscoe he only played a role in this particular scheme and he can return back to his family because the story here is nearly over, which brings me to this point. We as an audience are led to believe that once he said that line, that he was just completely lying about everything that he just told Sean and Julian. So the show took this extreme steps to showing us flashbacks of Leanne planting the wood in their bed, to her taking Jericho into the tunnels. So question I have for you all, did you love that moment of him telling the stories only to find out that he was lying? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Because really, all this was just for Sean and Julian. And as we're watching this, thing I did like though, it does pose the question, as you would imagine, you're kind of thrown off as an audience member. I question myself. Was he lying? Was he being truthful? He mentioned this all being an illusion and how the church uses this as their advantage. Again, the name of the episode is titled Myth. So I beg the question, y'all. Did you love the idea of how far this show went to throwing us off, making us believe that he was being truthful, but then also lying about this whole situation? Again, I believe there was some truth in what he was talking about, especially him meeting Aunt May and also the story about Leanne, but also he's lying about her not having powers. Let's have that conversation, please, in the comments section. But we end this episode with Julian's voice coming back as Leanne is back from her walk with Jericho to find Dorothy has made dinner for everyone. As all of them are starting to talk about their day, notice how Leanne felt somewhat like uncomfortable when Dorothy brought up how their mother used to cook for them and how much she loved them. Now, I don't know if her uncomfortability was due to the fact that obviously she didn't have this type of love and this type of treatment from her own mother, or if there's something a little bit more deeper than that. Let me know what you all thought about her being uncomfortable in that scene. As we see, Julian blames his lack of voice throughout this episode to allergies, and we see that Sean and Julian are testing her fake abilities, and they are not being grateful anymore, as Sean brings up that he might even break his contract with the studio, despite Leanne having blessed him with this opportunity. Julian is now back to being rude to her, which causes Leanne to being upset. She leaves the dinner, but before she does, she tells them to be very careful. Now, this scene to me was like definitely more of those older vibes that we got from the Turners from the very earlier seasons, with them being kind of arrogant and being very dismissive of Leanne. So that was kind of a throwback. We end this episode with Uncle George under the house praying and punishing himself for all the lies that he just told, and this was his last hope. Time to bring back the fallen one. So I'm just going to say it right now. You all know my criticism of this season has been the Lesser Saints have been lesser and lesser intimidating, and they have become, frankly, a joke at this point. So seeing Uncle George going to this lengths to telling this super elaborate lies and all these different things and how this was illusion gave me a little bit more hope that the Lesser Saints aren't as idiotic as they have been this entire season. So I do like that element, but let's talk about this. So what was the truth? I personally do believe everything that Dorothy discovered in today's episode about Leanne's obsession was real. But again, I have this feeling, y'all, that Leanne and Dorothy, there's going to be some reveal that they have to be related at this point, especially with her finding about her mom dying 2 days later. I still question if her mom is even dead. Hell, I even question if Dorothy and Julian's mom is even dead, because I've been saying it for years that she might have been a Lesser Saints member. But so much going on my head right now. Will Roscoe be really upset after finding out that he's been lied to and he was basically used as this chess piece in this bigger game of catching Leanne. Will he play any more into this season? Will Toby come back and play a role? And again, I beg the question, was this all for nothing? Lying to Sean and Julian to create this sense of false security that they can now take control and getting Leanne back to the Lesser Saints, which to me means that if they do this, and if she is this fallen angel and she has these powers of Satan, will this end up getting the Turners killed? Are the Lesser Saints using the Turners for collateral damage and we're getting back Leanne? Let me know your thoughts on that. But review-wise, I can't say it's a great plot to have us questioning what's real, what's fake. Where my issue lies with this episode. Why are we still questioning things with 3 episodes left? We shouldn't be adding more lore, more complications, more complexity to the story because it's coming to an end. So I would say for me, this episode left me with more frustration, more than being satisfied. So that's kind of where I want you all to come into the comment section. Again, comment your thoughts on everything that we got in this episode, from what did I miss? What theories do you all have? And again, I just feel like we take these 2 steps forward in previous episodes only to kind of go backwards. So again, how do you all feel about the episode? What did you feel was a lie? What was the truth? What were some theories you all took away from it? Let's talk about that in the comment section. Of course, if you're still here, put in the comments right now, hashtag truth or lies. And also, if you're still here, I got an exclusive for you all. I have seen the synopsis. I haven't watched the episode, but I read the synopsis of next week's episode, which will be titled Tunnels, and the synopsis reads the following. Sean and Julian make a decision about Leanne. What that decision is, I have no idea. I am to assume that, again, with this false hope that Leanne's not an angel, she doesn't have powers that they're led to believe due to the lies that George told them, they're going to try to get her out of the house, which I don't think will be a good idea. So let me know your thoughts on that synopsis. And for any of my movie fans out there, make sure to check out some of my most recent movie reviews for Creed 3 and Cocaine Bear, which are on the channel right now. You all are awesome. I hope you all enjoyed my breakdown today. Just a friendly reminder before we wrap up this video that if you haven't already, consider hitting that thumbs up, consider sharing this video, commenting all your thoughts below, and of course, if you haven't already, come and join the community. Hit that notification bell. That way you don't miss out on any of my reviews. You all are great. Hope you're staying safe. Come and join the community. Check out all my reviews for Servant. Check out my most recent breakdowns, and we'll catch you all on the next video.